Glad to be back with you again, and today is a very important topic that I think that a lot of people maybe need to be refreshed to think about, and sometimes we just don't think about it at all or enough for sure. And it's simply about this idea of being able to anticipate and seeing what's coming, because we know in our world today, just all sorts of things can be disruptive. We've lived it. We have the t-shirt, as they say. Um, but I want to just kind of start with this idea that leadership isn't just about reacting well. It's truly about seeing what's coming before everyone else does. And the best leaders don't wait for problems to explode before they act. If you're sitting back waiting for problems to then address, you're going to ultimately be behind. You need to start looking farther out, start to envision what could be disruptive. Years ago, I was meeting with a team and doing the leadership game, which is an incredible tool to utilize with your team to talk about leadership topics. And one of the conversations that came up as part of the morning with the team was, what do you see as the biggest threats over the next 12 months? That was the exercise. And they all had sticky notes, and their task was to fill out on these sticky notes and then put them on a wall. And they all had just incredible ideas. And the owners, they said, you know what? They started looking at all these things that people had put up there. As a group of about 10 or 12 people in the room. They said, you know what? We're going to use these for our staff meetings for the next several weeks or months to address them, because they found that one simple question to get the different perspectives from different team members in their management team to anticipate what could be coming. And they said, you know what, we need to capitalize on this. We need to utilize this tool, these things that you're seeing, to address what could be coming our way. See, they were trying to see around corners. They were trying to anticipate what could be coming. And was there a guarantee that all those things would happen? No. Did all those things happen? I'm sure it didn't. But they all had different perspectives, and I want to talk about that as we go along today as well. But before we get there, I think one of the biggest things that is important for leaders is to first define reality, know where you are, and really understand what could be coming based on where we are today, not just maybe you could have fear of the future. You don't want that. You could also have high goals and expectations that could be a little too lofty sometimes. So you want to make sure that you're balancing optimism and pessimism, honestly, with realism. And we all want to have a realistic perspective. We just tend to package it in pessimism or optimism. And I think as leaders, we have to really define reality. And we need to be keeping our finger on the pulse of where we are, not just where we aspire to be. And I think that's one of the greatest challenges. You see, we can overestimate where we are, or maybe we don't judge properly and we think we're better than we are. Sometimes we think we're worse than we are. But as leaders, we need to know truly where we are. Data can help with that, certainly, but also just understanding the climate of your team. What's the environment like? What's the morale like? What are we up against? What are we doing well? What are we struggling with? Those types of questions can help you define reality, and doing it regularly. I don't know that you need to necessarily do it every week, but at least on a monthly and quarterly basis, you need to pause and really take a snapshot of where are we? What are we doing well? What are we struggling in? What do we need to focus on? I love the 12-week yearbook by Brian Moran, where he talks about, basically taking the mindset of, the sprint that often happens at the end of a year, and making that a norm for each quarter of the year. So instead of waiting, 12 months to get your goals, you say, whatever the next 3 months or 90 days, here's what we're going to tackle. And I think that you can do that better when you have a realistic perspective of where you are and what your big goals are and how you're going to tackle them. So defining reality and not just avoiding the hard stuff, right? Avoidance can be a real trigger or downside for leaders that can put things in a negative space. Um, Define reality and then saying, you know what, we have to own this. We may not like reality, but we need to do something about it to move forward. If you're in a great space, that's awesome. Celebrate it, which, by the way, many leaders don't do well. I know I don't do that well for myself or in teams I'm on, because I'm so much like, hey, we accomplished that. We kind of climbed that mountain. Now let's climb the next mountain, right? The next project, whatever is in front of us. So we need to celebrate when our reality is positive. We need to not bury our heads in the sand when things are negative. We need to say, okay, this is where we are. How are we going to fix this? But avoidance is not the issue either way. The second thing that I really want to I want to discuss with you on this is really being able to scan beyond your role and avoiding tunnel vision, because that's another thing. It's easy when we're isolated in a specific season sometimes, or role, responsibilities, tasks, projects. It's easy to put blinders on and not see anything around us. And while that's good for horses racing down a track, that's not good for leaders. We need to be able to truly scan and oversee the horizon, what's happening around us. How's the team doing in general? How's the organization doing if you're at the top of the entire organization? Um, if you're a community leader, how's the community doing? Things like that, where you're not just so locked into what you're specifically involved in, but you're really keeping your eyes open to what else is going on. There's this really interesting. It's an image for us today because we don't see this, but back in biblical times, in ancient times, cities would have somebody up on a watchtower, and their job was to be the watchman to scan the horizon. So they were elevated right above everybody else. They could see for distances out in front, long ahead before maybe intruders or you know uh, just strangers are coming to their city and their towns, but they were scanning continually to keep an eye on things. This happens, I'm sure, in the military where there's people that are lookouts that are trying to keep an eye on things. What's coming? Now we have all this technology, right, through drones and all sorts of computer technology that lets you see from thousands of feet above in the air down on the ground and see what's happening or out in space even. That's amazing technology, but think about that in your own team, your own organization. How are you scanning things? How are you keeping an eye on things so that you're not locked in on and have tunnel vision where you're missing what's going on around you? Scan beyond your role. Talk to people in different departments or different, projects, different areas that you're involved in, and see what's going on in their world. Ask them how are things going, and get a realistic perspective. And especially if you're a senior leader, or if you're the owner, the executive, or a manager of a department, you need to be communicating well consistently across departments, across divisions to understand what's going on, because you could have really strong teams in one area and you could really have strugglers in other areas. And as a senior leader, you have to keep an eye on all that and really work with your middle level leaders in order to make sure those areas are healthy and moving in the right direction. So keep scanning from your role. And then I alluded to this before, especially with that leadership game story, but you need to really look at anticipation and this idea of seeing around corners as a team sport. It's not just what you can do, because once again, that's why you go to other people and check in and see what are they seeing. You really need to get buy-in from everybody else and say, help me be the eyes, be my eyes in your department, in your project, in your area, because I'm not going to see everything. I heard a speaker one time years ago say that the higher up you go in the org chart in an organization, the less you actually hear from farther down in the organization. And that, I think that's true. Not everything trickles up to the senior leadership level. And so you could be up in the C-suite thinking everything's great, and you talk to frontline workers, middle level managers, and you realize no, things aren't as great as you think they are, because things haven't risen to your desk as quickly as it has risen to theirs. So involving people, building buy-in, just getting that perspective from different people. I love it, the analogy of, if you're an eyewitness and you see a car accident, what I see on this from my perspective, what you would see from your perspective, what other people would see from their perspective would all be different. And actually, that's why eyewitness testimony in court cases is often challenging, because we all see things so differently than the others. But in leadership, it's actually not a negative thing when you're seeing things from different perspectives, because then at least it can all be put on the table. That exercise of that team where they put all those concerns on the wall, some people didn't have any clue about some of the concerns other people were writing down. Some people didn't think they were concerns, probably, but others did. So having that conversation and saying, as a group, we're going to work on this. We're going to anticipate the challenges that we might be facing, but we also are going to look at the opportunities that we have coming down the line. So it's not just about threats. See, and this is the other thing. A lot of times we think that challenges are always negative, right? But they're not. Challenges are actually opportunities to innovate. There's opportunities to grow. And so yes, it may have a negative connotation as you're thinking about it, but then as you start to dig into it, it's like, well, we could really get good at a certain skill or a certain, industry area to address this challenge that we currently have. So that's why I want you to think about this, not just from a negative, pessimistic side of things, but when those negative or concerning things do rise up, what are the opportunities on the other side of that? What's the other side of that coin? And there's always an opportunity. It's really really important to view this as a positive way that hey, we're going to get better, even if we're going through a challenging season or a challenging stretch. We're going to get better. We're going to get on the other side of this as we band together, as we have this collective buy-in to succeed. Guess what? We're going to be stronger down the road to accomplish new goals, new mission initiatives that we have. So really think about this because once again, define that reality, making sure that you have your finger on the pulse. What is really going on? Scanning around you, no, not getting that tunnel vision, seeing things for what's really out there, and then finally including other people to have that collective team buy-in and effort to keep your collective eyes open so that you can ultimately work together to address and head off even problems. So I just want to encourage you today. What are your current goals? What are your current challenges? What opportunities could be coming around the corner? What challenges could be lurking in the corners in the dark, so to speak? And how are you going to address them? You could do some exercises of worst case scenarios. And while that feels like a negative exercise and it can actually feel negative when you're doing it also brings out a lot of creativity when you say, let's just put some worst case scenarios on the table and let's talk about what would we do if. And so put those out there. But you could also say, what if we had this kind of a windfall of positive things? How would we handle that? Sometimes teams aren't ready for the positive windfalls as much as they're not ready for the negative things that come their way. So anticipation is a skill. Anticipation is something you have to be intentional about because if not, you're just going to be basically drifting through your day-to-day leadership. You're going to be drifting through assuming that everything is going to be fine. There's going to be the status quo. There's not going to be any waves on the water. It's just going to be smooth sailing. And we just know that that's not life. That's not business. That's not reality. So define that reality. Where are you? Think about where you are realistically, honestly. Scan your horizon around you. What's going on outside of your little bubble that you can find yourself in? And then to do that and to look at solutions to potential problems is how can I include my team? How can I get more eyes out there? One of the best resources that I think a lot of organizations don't take advantage of enough are new people because new people come in with fresh eyes, fresh perspective, fresh ideas, and don't waste that because the scary part about it is even though somebody may not be there very long, they get enveloped into the organization pretty quickly. So those fresh eyes don't last very long. You might have 90 days or 180 days, 3 to 6 months, where somebody really does see things with fresh eyes. It may not be that long. Some people just jump right in. They're so busy and off to the races that they just kind of absorb into the culture and they don't see the gaps. They don't see the challenges. They don't see the opportunities because now they're full throttle in with you. It's kind of like when you go into somebody else's house, you can see the messes, you can see the nicks on the wall, you can see, the stains on the carpet. You walk into your own house every day, you overlook those things because they've just become normal to you. You're desensitized to them. Same thing is true in business. When you walk into an organization, you kind of see everything for all they are, the good, the bad, the ugly. But over time, and once again, it doesn't take a lot of time, many times, is that newness wears off, and now you're just one of the team, and you don't see it as you once did. So as a leader, make sure you're taking advantage. If you're a new leader to a team, then make sure you're taking notes and making suggestions of what you're seeing, what maybe we could do to fix certain things, or take advantage of opportunities that people may just be ignoring. If you're a leader though, and you have new people who are entering your team, entering your organization, spend time with them, or make sure somebody is spending time with them, asking them the questions of what do you see that maybe we're missing? What do you see that are kind of glaring to you, but they quit being obvious to us a long time ago? Asking those types of questions are huge for your team development, your individual development, your individual growth. And I just really believe that if you go in it with that, then you can start to anticipate some things in fresh ways. So, hey, if you need help personally with your own leadership development or clarifying your goals and your next step strategies, I'd encourage you to reach out to McClureCoaching.com and click the button to apply for a free strategy session. I'd love to have a call with you. Also, if you're looking to develop your employees so that they're better leaders, so they can work alongside you to accomplish your mission, to accomplish your vision, I have team programs as well that we could talk about. So once again, just go to McClureCoaching.com, and I'd love to schedule a time to chat with you. Just fill out a brief application, let me know what's going on and how I might be able to help you, and we'll schedule a time to get together. So anticipate, anticipate, make that a skill that you want to really develop, especially as you head into this next, month or 6 month stretch and say, you know what, I want to get better at this. Even if maybe you've been good at it for a while, how can you up level that to the next level so that you can be great at it? So take care, God bless, and we will see you soon.